You and Joe Biden, huh?
That's right. He's a little older than me. Okay, we'll call the July 12th, 2024 Charter Revision Commission meeting to order. I see that everyone is present. Thank you for being here on a little bit of short notice. And the first thing on the agenda would be the public comment period. Mr. Secretary, do we have anyone who signed up to speak?
No one has signed up.
Is anyone here? We always, of course, give anyone who's here an opportunity to speak. Is there any business you would like to make us aware of beforehand? I can't believe that Dave Rosenberg's not going to say anything.
I too find that hard to believe.
Wonders never cease.
So let the record reflect that. Okay, then we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the approval of the minutes of our March 11th meeting. They were circulated and I think appear to be in order. If everyone's hopefully had a chance to review them, and we would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Murphy, a second by Mr. Harden. Any discussion on the minutes? If not, then all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Then the minutes will be approved unanimously. I will next turn to, Austin, do you do it or does Nikki do that?
I can do the appeal rights.
The notice of appeal rights, if anyone wishes to move forward after we act.
Parties wishing to appeal a decision of the commission are encouraged to engage independent legal counsel to determine the appeal rights and deadlines. Generally, appeals of metropolitan boards and commissions are initiated by filing a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery Court. A decision by this commission to certify or not certify a petition may be appealed to the Davidson County Chancery Court by filing a petition for writ of certiorari within 30 days after the decision of this commission.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move then on to the real business that we're here for, which is the proposed charter amendments in Council Resolution RS 2024-559. We've got several. I understand one may be withdrawn. As everyone is aware, it's our obligation to consider these and make a recommendation to the Charter Revision Committee as to whether we agree, disagree, or have questions about the charter amendments, or proposed charter amendments. I guess we will take them in order. Nikki, if I could ask you, is there anything else that we need to do other than just consider these proposals?
No. Your recommendations is to the Metropolitan Council.
You've got the entire council. Okay, I guess it flows through the committee, so.
Technically, it's a council,
Okay.
but the committee is a committee of the council. So.
Good. Okay. Then, Sherry, do you want to
me to go ahead?
kind of go ahead? I think it would be, I know you've got a couple of things, and maybe just if you would, just give a few second description of what the council has done, and we will then take each proposed amendment up separately.
Happy to.
Thanks.
So I am Council Lady Sherry Weiner. I am the Charter Revision Committee Chair for this term, and wanted to just share with you a little bit about the three amendments and what our process was. We opened up the opportunity to the departments and to the council members as well as the public to offer us any suggestions that they wanted to bring to us in terms of proposed or potential proposed charter amendments. We took that list and reviewed each one, whittled it down to probably 7 or 8, I think it was, and ended up with a list of 3. Subsequent to our last meeting, I was approached by Mark Young, who represents the firefighters, and their request for amendment number 2 was to please withdraw it. So I will be withdrawing amendment number 2. Otherwise, here we are. Amendment number 1 really addresses the succession planning in the absence of the Director of Finance and how that works within the confines of that department. We had an issue last term when we had an absence there, and I think there were some potential issues that they wanted to just cleanup. And then amendment number 3 is the one that addresses the age and residence qualification to serve on the council. Oh, thank you. Will you bring those up because I forgot about that. I apologize.
If I could address the commission. Margaret Darby, I'm the legal director for the council.
Yeah, I'm glad you did.
Subsequent to the committee making its, filing its resolution with the 3 amendments to the council, council members have submitted 2 additional amendments. One of those amendments is to amendment number 1 to the resolution, and it modifies the succession planning a bit. So instead of having 1 of the divisional directors in the finance department named, it names 2 of those directors as potential to fill the seat during the interim, and that person would be chosen by the mayor, and it would be for a finite time until, so that the interim director would not serve out the full term without the council approval. So that is one of the subsequent amendments. The second one is an amendment to the provision for meetings and the scheduling of meetings. So currently the charter says you can't have more regular meetings than twice a month. This would amend that to remove the month of September from regular meetings. So you could still have special called meetings, but not regular meetings during that month.
Okay, then I guess we won't consider the fire department amendment, proposed amendment. We will go to the amendment 1, which concerns succession planning in the office of Department of Finance Director. So we need to consider the amended version. We don't need to address anything related to the
That was my question.
first version. Yeah, do we?
The amended version hasn't actually replaced the original one yet.
That is correct.
So
It would-
conceivably, one or the other could be recommended, right? So
So
it
if
sounds
you-
like we might need
you
to
ought to do
recommend
both.
on both.
I think that's a really good
Just
point,
to be
because otherwise we
safe.
might have to come back.
Yeah, that's right.
So-
Happy to come back always.
So the committee already approved the amendment to amendment.
The
1.
committee, but has
The
the
council
the
has.
I mean, the
council.
council has not.
Yes.
The council hasn't approved any of this yet.
No, we understand. So I mean,
So probably out of an abundance of caution, consider.
yeah, I'm
both.
thinking maybe just to be safe, we ought to do them both, and that way, in the unlikely event that the committee's amendment doesn't get adopted, you've got a recommendation on both.
Okay, so why don't we,
Can I ask another question? So the one on the finance department, did that come from the finance department? That was there? And the amendment that adds the multiple options instead of the single option, is that something they also had involvement
In the
in?
administration, yes.
In the mayor's
Okay.
office, yes.
Okay. Just wanted to understand where it's coming from.
Yeah.
I had a question about just cleaning everything up while we're doing this, so why not take out the $15,000 per annum, which, clean it up.
It's in all of them. If we had to do that, we'd have to amend every section of the charter almost.
and there's been discussion about that, but the way it is, it's, dependent on the pay plan. So but it is kind of humorous to look and say $15,000 per annum paid semi-monthly.
And for people to go into a voting booth now and look at it is very different than it just sitting there and nobody looking at it.
Right.
I would think, and for our purposes here, we're looking specifically at these amendments, but perhaps we should make a recommendation through the council that they
To consider cleaning all those
consider
out.
cleaning all that language up.
That would be consistent with the wishes of the committee based on lively conversation when we saw that.
Well, you can also add to the discussion that the Charter Revision Commission strongly supports
Yeah.
that approach, because I do think it is confusing. And
Should be at least 20,000.
I don't think you want to debate pay in the charter. That's
Okay, so let's do the original Amendment 1, which would appoint the treasurer in the finance department, Metropolitan treasurer. any comments, Sherry, on that specifically from the?
Not really, we supported it. It didn't bring up a lot of, comment or concern, so.
Okay, so then any discussion or questions, any discussion we need to have on it?
We would then vote the original amendment down.
Up or down?
We could, or we could vote it both up and just
Yeah.
say, it's your call.
Okay.
So whichever way you want to go, I think we could do.
So
And maybe that's the right thing, is just go ahead and vote
to
against
disapprove, that's a
the
good
initial
good
one.
point.
Yeah,
Well, thank you that.
Is that your motion, Loretta?
that's my motion.
I'll second that
All
motion.
right, we have a motion to not recommend approval of original Amendment 1. Any discussion on the motion? If not, then all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Then our recommendation will be not to approve that. So now let's go to the amendment on that resolution, which would specifically designate chief accountant, treasurer, and budget officer to serve for no more than 90 days prior to council action. So you need I guess we need a motion on to approve or disapprove that recommendation.
Move to approve.
Motion and a second.
Okay, can
Yes.
I just say something?
Sure.
And this applies to all the amendments. The charter requires that, your role is advisory, and that includes basically telling the council whether the proposed amendments certifies the requirements outlined in the charter. So there's that form that's outlined in 19.02A that requires that there be a title, there's been an explanatory summary, the text, and a statement of the financial impact. My understanding is that the council office, and Ms. Darby can speak to that, will be, that they'll be filing an amendment to conform all these proposed charter amendments to that form as prescribed in the charter.
That it doesn't violate any other provisions, that it doesn't violate state law, and that the financial impact is that.
Yeah, so they will actually be filing an amendment that will include, for each proposed charter change, a statement of the financial impact. It's not there right now in the way it's formatted. If you look at the format, it's, so I just wanted to mention that you may want to include in your recommendation that it be amended to conform to 19.02A, the form. And maybe you can speak to that more, so they can.
So subsequent to those amendments going through the committee, Metro Legal, Ms. Ecke informed us that it needed to be very specifically conformed, the formatting needed to be conformed to the language in the charter, which is fine. Instead of trying to do those amendments on the front end, the plan is to wait until the committee makes a recommendation, and then those amendments as to the form will be submitted to the council at the August 6th, before the August 6th meeting.
And I assume this one has no financial impact, is that correct?
Yes, so the financial statements were included, that have been submitted to the council through the analysis in the same way that we do a financial statement with regard to all legislation. And so all of these don't have any financial impact.
Okay.
Yeah, so the motion can just indicate that each amendment be revised to conform to the form set forth in 19.02A. So that way, everything will be in order.
And you made the motion.
Yes, I know.
Would you include that in your motion?
Yes, I'm going to include that in the motion.
Recommend that it be,
Yes.
meet the 4 requirements of 1902. Okay, and who's second?
And I second as amended.
Okay, good. So we've got a motion and a second to approve the amended or revised succession planning in the finance department, and also to include the appropriate 19.02A language. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, then all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion to recommend approval with, as stated, with the appropriate language is approved unanimously. Okay, so then the Amendment 2, I think we just take no action on. That's going to be removed. Proposed Amendment 3 concerns the age qualification contained in the Metro Charter, which is currently 25. The motion, or the proposal would remove that requirement and state that it is the age of voting as set forth, I guess, within Tennessee. Is that
It
accurate?
really just says you have to be a qualified voter, so
Consistent with Tennessee law.
there's no age.
Essentially 18 minimum.
Yeah, 18 would be minimum, that's right. And again, what's the impetus for this?
I am going to, with your permission, turn the floor over to Mr. Rutherford. This was not unanimous. There were 2 members in dissent, but this was a proposal by Councilmember Rutherford, and I think it's best if you hear from him.
If I have that permission to
Absolutely.
speak,
Yeah.
thank you.
Councilman
I
Rutherford.
appreciate the opportunity. Okay, well, that's good to know. But I'm John Rutherford. For those of you who may not be familiar with me, I'm the council member for District 31 down in the southeast. And to give you a little bit of the sort of the origin of where this came from, I attended the National League of Cities conference in Atlanta in November. Had the opportunity to meet a lot of great people, council members from all across the country. And one in particular stood out to me, was a young man from the state of Indiana. He's 23 years old, and he was near the end of his first term on council there. So he was elected about the age of 19. I inquired about his city's age because it kind of struck me as being a little unusual in terms of what I was used to here. And he said that they had basically set no minimum, which meant the age was the age of voting, so 18. And so I started doing a little research, called upon council staff to help with that research as well. And we found that not only across Tennessee, but across the country, we are one of the most stringent in terms of our minimum age at 25. And in fact, we're more stringent than the Tennessee State House, which has a minimum age of 21. So the more I thought about this, the more I talked to folks, I thought this would be something to put forward, let the people decide. And ultimately, I don't envision a circumstance where council is suddenly inundated with 18-year-old members, but because they still have to run and win an election. And so that again would be up to the people of whether or not to elect someone of that age. We're in a time where we're obviously talking about the top end of serving in elective office. This is talking about the lower end. So I see it as local government being the government that's closest to the people, and therefore I believe everyone who is otherwise eligible should be eligible to run. So that means lowering the age to 18. That's where it came from. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
If I could ask you.
Yes, sir.
You say it was a split vote. What was if you're comfortable sharing some of the discussion in the committee meeting, those who maybe were opposed to it, what was the?
I'm happy to discuss that. Councilmember Weiner may also want to interject on some things with that, but the way I saw it, the opposition to it was kind of twofold, one of which is the concern about where someone between the age of 18 and 25 who are currently not eligible should be at that point in their life. And I'm like, well, you know, if you think that maybe there's 18-year-olds that you wouldn't want to see on council, I think there's also 50-year-olds you wouldn't want to see on council. So that's kind of subjective, you know. And then the other bit of opposition to it was not wanting to get in the way or otherwise cloud the ballot and be in the way, if you will, of the mayor's transportation plan. Personally, I don't see it as hindering it. This is very simple. This is not a complicated matter we're putting before the voters. So I don't personally see it that way, but that was also mentioned as well.
What I'll add is, for those of us that had some concerns about it, and I was one of them, my biggest angst, which was consistent with the other one, is that we didn't feel like it was emergent. We were looking for things that were timely, that needed to be addressed now, because we do see more things that we need to address, but wanted to punt that to the next opportunity that we have to offer charter revision. We felt that we need to focus our attention on getting the explanation out to the community as it relates to the transit referendum, and didn't want to, as Councilmember Rutherford said, cloud that issue. And so for that reason, we decided that we didn't think that at this time it was necessary to be on the ballot right now, and that there's going to be so much on the ballot that we didn't want to, we wanted transit to be at the top. We wanted to make sure that people had their eyes directed to what we considered to be a really timely issue. And we didn't see this as a timely issue.
A question about that, if the transit amendment comes through as anticipated, will the amendments be placed on the ballot in the order that they were approved by the council, or can the council determine
Right.
how they're done?
I believe we can determine that.
I
can
think
stipulate
that
later.
I think that it gets determined by the election commission.
Here we go. The election commission is going
So they will determine what.
So, but the traffic referendum isn't a charter amendment, right?
That's correct.
right.
It's just a straight up
Correct.
referendum
It's just a
offered us by
referendum.
state law.
We just don't know where on the,
Right.
in the scheme of things it'll.
Whether the charter amendments will go above or
Yeah,
below
good point, Jim.
a state mandated.
Right.
Yes.
And if I may add one other thing, and I certainly don't want to get into a back and forth between myself and Councilmember Weiner, who I greatly respect, but one other piece I would like to add is that on the notion of it not being emergent, we do have, of course, another opportunity 2 years from now to move forward. But if you look at the election cycle, the next council election being in August of '27, then we would look at potentially passing this in November of '26. And that is a time, just looking back at my own experience as a candidate, that a decision to run for office and start planning to run for office typically would happen prior to that. So we're putting anyone who we might be making eligible to run at that time at a disadvantage, because they wouldn't know they would be eligible until that November election. And so I kind of see the time to do this as now and not then. To be fair to those folks.
Was there any discussion about how this might play into the state law that would reduce the council size to 20, and whether that impacted any thoughts on whether this should be adopted or not?
So to your
depending
point,
on what happens with that litigation.
Right. To your point, Councilmember Cap and I did have that concern, and see that there's going to be a lot of things that have to be amended and managed if the court decides that the council will be reduced, and it would happen during this time frame. And so we saw that as more consistent with what would happen part and parcel, which at this point we still don't know.
And the reality is, if that has to happen, it probably has to happen earlier in the year than traditionally the later part of the term. You probably need to do that like in the summer, so that all those things are sorted out in time for people to
Districts and everything.
qualify and know what the district they live in.
There
and
are
all
a
that
lot
kind
of things
stuff.
at play if it gets reduced.
Yes.
I'm not a lawyer, but one of the attorneys in the room may interject on this.
There's several here.
But I do believe that the state law currently allows for the age of service in office to be as low as 18, and that really is not connected in any way to the potential downsizing of council and the decisions that this council would have to make as part of that process.
And I would agree with that comment. I think you're right. I don't necessarily think they're connected, but I think there is a likelihood, if that litigation goes one way and says the council has to be reduced, I think it does mean that sometime in 2026, probably earlier rather than later, there will be a lot of work to do to try to make the charter conform to the ultimate decision. Or I guess we could just ignore the charter and, do whatever the state says. But so I think I hear both sides of this. I understand what your point is. You're right. The state law doesn't require this. This is something that is totally a charter driven. But I also hear the point from Sherry and her crew that we're gonna need to do charter amendment. We're likely, depending on which way the litigation goes, we might have to do a lot of amendments to fix that. That would be a more appropriate time. And I understand that too. So those are, I mean, they're two good arguments. I'm torn.
You want to, of course, encourage people as much as possible to participate.
Well, and the point about not distracting from transit is also a good one. And that, I mean, I think of this one and the one about only meeting, or not having a meeting in September, both create kind of a opportunity for people to focus on those more so than transit. The first one, nobody cares about whether who replaces the finance director when, when there's a vacancy. That's really purely administrative. The other two have the potential to get groups agitated. Maybe, I don't know. This one might not. This one's close because, I mean, the group that's probably going to be the most agitated is the group of people between 18 and 25 who might want to run for office. Do people who are older than 25 really care? So,
all this comes on the heels of this scientific study that shows that boys don't mature until they're 25. Our brains don't, and I can attest to that.
At the earliest.
From personal experience.
But then Alexander conquered the world at 25. But the life expectancy then was 33.
So what is the pleasure of the commission? We would need a motion to either approve or disapprove, and then we can debate it, but let's get something out there for discussion. Don't everybody speak at once.
I will move to approve.
Okay, we got a motion to approve. Do we have a second to that motion?
I second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
I just say this is a hard one, not because it's not a good idea. Okay, I'm not saying that it's not a good idea. It's just a question of, is it the right time? And that's my only concern. So I'm still thinking, but
I share that too.
I think the idea to do this is probably a good idea. I'm just not sure it's a good idea today.
Is it too late to interject?
No, go ahead.
I also look at it from a age discrimination standpoint. This was original to the charter as written in the early 1960s. Society was very different then in terms of how we looked at people in general. And so we're in a different place today. And I think it's never too early to end discrimination. And I do see this as age discrimination, and this is our opportunity to fix it.
And I don't disagree with that to some extent, but I also think that this isn't the last opportunity to fix it. And so I think that's the other side of that is, I hear what you're saying. I think you make some really good points. The question just is it the right time? And I think that's a closer call. As far as the substance of it, the idea of one question is 18 the right number, or should it be something like 21? I don't know. That's, again, when you start on that scale, it's like, what's the right number? And again, as you say, in a lot of places across the country, it's 18. Legislature's 21. So, there are some other waypoints that you could pick that would be better than 25.
One of my concerns, it's not even a concern, I guess, but somebody could be on a jury when they're 21, right? When they're 19, they can be on a jury. I mean, those are some pretty serious decisions that are made. So it seems kind of obtuse to say, you have the power to do this, which may be committing somebody to life imprisonment, but you don't have the power to vote on a Metro Council. You can't be a member of the council.
And in keeping with that argument, you can serve in the military at 18.
You can serve in the military. I removed kids from homes at age 21 because I had my degree and I was working for the state. So there's a lot of power and wisdom that we give people at an earlier age. And I'm not saying that I don't have more wisdom than when I was 21, because I think I do have more wisdom. It does concern me. I would be great if people said, let's go move the drinking age to 21 again. But we're at that stage. There's the technical knowledge, et cetera. If it doesn't pass, it could be brought up again in a few years.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is the thought is not the merits and substance of the motion, of the proposed amendment. It's really just the timing of it. And I do share Hal and Jim's concerns about, are we going to get this ballot kind of mucked up? And maybe that's not.
And maybe that's not our concern.
Yeah,
maybe that's
couldn't be.
the council's concern.
Yeah. Well, my feeling is that we encourage people to register to vote. And one of the main places we go is to high schools, colleges, to get them to vote. We want you to vote. You turn 18, you vote. And they are very concerned about issues which someone my age may not be as concerned about, just like the transit. I think more young people are concerned about transit than I am. My transit is my car, and it's going to be my car, okay? But I understand the general feelings of the public and that young people are concerned about the environment and the footprint that they leave behind. And they should, if we're encouraging them to register to vote, they should be able to vote on issues that are of even more concern to them probably than to me, like the environment, like other things that affect them. So I'm all for it, because I would be a hypocrite to tell them, come on now, you need to register to vote, and I've got all these forms for them to fill out. And then, well, can I run for the council? Can I do this? No, you have to wait until you're 25 or whatever. So I'm for it. And I see a lot of young people who have, and I think of the two Justins who have been on the forefront of things for a long time and have made mature decisions. So I'm for it. The sooner the better.
Any more discussion?
My thoughts are along the lines of Joy. I think that encouraging participation, more participation, is in the interest of everyone. So I really think that's what this does, is it encourages the participation of youth, and I'm for it.
Okay, then if
And
there's...
Judy, I'm gonna just comment, and I'm rethinking my thoughts about this. I think where I'm gonna come down on is I'm gonna say I'll support it, but I also think we should say that the council should make the call as to whether it ought to be on the ballot now.
Send that message.
The concept is good, but I am concerned about the timing, but the content is good. And so then it becomes Sherry and Councilman Ruther could knock it out of the council over whether it goes on or not. But, I mean, I think the concept is right. So that's going to be where I am. So that, if when I vote yes, that's with that caveat that I think the council ought to decide. That's really more their call than ours.
Would it be appropriate?
It's not part of the motion.
Would it be appropriate to amend the motion? Eileen, would you consider amending your motion to, if you agree with what Mr. Murphy's saying, that we approve it but urge the council to consider the timing, or if you don't want to do that, you don't have to do that. Or Mr. Murphy could make a motion to amend your motion.
That's what I'll do. I'll make a motion.
I'm not gonna,
I'm gonna make a motion to amend Eileen's motion to say that we support it, but we also defer to the council to make the decision on whether it's appropriate.
Well, why don't we just defer to the council on it?
Entirely?
Well, we need to make a,
need to
our
vote
job
on
is
it.
either to recommend approval or disapproval, so I think we need to.
I want to recommend approval, but I want to also tell the council that they need to make the call as to whether it should be now or later. That that's really not, I don't think, our role.
So, Austin, do you have the substance of this motion? We need a second to Mr. Murphy's proposed amendment to the main motion. Anybody?
I'll do it, I'll second.
Second, okay, Ms. McLaughlin will second it. Okay, so first thing we'll do is we'll vote on the amendment to the motion. So all those in favor of the amendment to Ms. Behan's motion as proposed by Mr. Murphy, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so now we'll vote on the main motion, which is.
So was it unanimous? Because I couldn't tell.
No, because
Could you
now I'm
clarify?
confused.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm confused.
Yeah, if Mr.
Okay, so he-
Kyle could take a roll, that way there's clarity.
This is on the amendment to her motion. Chair Branstad,
Yes.
Vice Chair Harden,
No.
Commissioner Behan,
no.
Commissioner McLaughlin,
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy,
Yes.
Commissioner Sims,
No.
and Commissioner Short Jones.
No.
It's 3 in favor, 4 against.
So it fails. So
Okay,
now
so-
we're on the main motion.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to,
It's okay.
for people not to feel like I was giving them an opportunity to vote. Okay, so now the amendment fails, so now we're back on the main motion, which is to recommend approval of the charter amendment as presented. So all those in favor of that motion, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay, so then it's unanimous to recommend approval. And I'm sure there will be discussion at the council about whether there's appropriate timing or not, and I think it would not be inappropriate to say that in our discussions, even though our
That motion failed.
Okay,
I've never known the council not to have a conversation.
And if I could just say thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for bringing that, well, I don't think anybody was questioning the validity of what the substance of the motion is. Only question is kind of the timing issue, which, again, as you say, may or may not be our place. Okay, then we are to the next amendment, which would be number 4, which is to have no regular meetings in the month of September. Is that because of the election, people will be coming in? I'm curious if anyone can kind of help us, at least help me understand the thought behind not having a meeting in September.
So we had this past year not had a meeting in January because of the holidays and because of the intensity of everything that the staff had been leading up to. So we were trying to give the staff a break, essentially. And so the thought.
It's one meeting, not two.
I meant one meeting, I didn't mean the whole month, the first meeting. And so the thought was, when we have turnover after an election, and during the month of September, there's a lot of scurrying about trying to get things set up, bring people on board, and that led rise to the thought of the presenting sponsor of this particular amendment, Councilmember Toombs, was that, well, you know, I think the council members probably need a break too. Maybe we should just offer them a break and staff a break during the entire month of September. And that was the substance of the rationale that she presented, was that we go so fast and furious throughout the year, other than this every 4-year cycle when we take that break, and it still feels like we're going fast and furious. She felt like it was appropriate to move to offer that amendment so that we're off in the month of September.
But that's every year.
That's every year. Yes. It too was not unanimous, essentially for the reason you're thinking,
Yeah.
is that we thought that there were those of us in the room that thought that it was not a good message to send to our constituents that, oh, by the way, we're going to take a month off. Now, did I miss anything in the conversation? I think that pretty well sums it up, right?
How does that impact the month of October? Does everything public, because isn't September a public hearing month?
Yes, well,
Every month.
every month is a public hearing month.
Except for June.
Except for June, yeah, except for June because of budget. And so, yes, everything, planning, zoning, any public hearings, everything would get pushed back. And it would impact the planning commission in terms of when they would hear things because of our system, our process to address zoning bills after the planning commission has heard something, and then we have to have a public hearing. And so you have to go through 3 votes for zoning bills to pass. That would be the greatest impact.
And maybe this is a question for Margaret, if the mayor or vice mayor were to call a special meeting, is the special meeting, I know it would be limited to what was the call was, but could it be called to consider all business as otherwise would have been considered at a regular meeting, so that in effect you could have a regular meeting, or would it have to be so limited that it would not really solve that issue?
I think it would have to specify what was being considered at that meeting. I think that the specification could be large. We're going to consider
A full agenda.
Well, I wouldn't say a full agenda. I would say we're going to consider all of these specific items. But those specific items could be what would otherwise have been heard at a regular meeting. I just think it needs to be very specific about what the special meeting is being called for. And not just general, not just say, oh, what we would normally hear in September is what we're going to hear.
One of the questions, too, that came up during the course of our conversation about this particular amendment was that in January, the vice mayor made the sole decision to cancel that first meeting of the month. And so the question became, and I'll let you address it, could the vice mayor just make a decision not to have a September meeting during that month? Is that within her purview now, and is this necessary?
Yes, if you're asking me a question.
Charter says you have these meetings, and I guess if
The charter says you can only have your regular meetings 2 times a month.
And to me, the solution here is, if you want to make that clear, instead of saying you're not going to have meetings in September, to me, the better answer would be to make it clear that the vice mayor could elect or could determine not to have a meeting, and that way you don't have a mandatory dead period in September, but you've got the flexibility to say,
Hi, I'm so sorry. Councilmember Toombs wanted me to provide this to the chair.
okay,
sure.
Timing is everything.
I think this is a letter that she's presenting. I'll pass it around to perhaps in her absence, she wished to, we may have to share.
One question that I would have while we're going on this, how would you describe an adjourned meeting as opposed to a special meeting?
An adjourned meeting would be one that if you're having a meeting and you do not conclude that meeting, you can adjourn it to a date specific. And you pick up your business where you left off at the prior meeting. So that would be an adjourned meeting. A special meeting is one where you designate the specific items that are going to be considered at a special meeting.
I think we had one of those in my term where it was 2 a.m. and it was like, we need to adjourn this and come back tomorrow. This is ridiculous.
Well, and I'm curious about the interpretation. I at first had the thought, well, are you required to have meetings each month? And then I looked at it again, and it seems to imply that you do. Is there a different interpretation?
Yes, I think so, and I've I know that I'm in a room full of great legal minds, especially for metropolitan government.
I thought you were going to say old legal minds.
No. Former law directors. So the interpretation that we have found, that we've made, especially for January, is kind of focusing on the word only. So your regular meetings can only be held on those 2 days of the month. You can't hold a regular meeting any other day of the month. If it's another day of the month, it's going to be considered a special meeting. That's kind of the interpretation that implies that you don't have to have 2 meetings per month, but your regular meetings can only be held on those 2 days of the month.
Of each month.
Of each month.
I just received a text from Councilmember Toombs, and she said something isn't accurate, so with your permission, I can either read her response or put her on the call. And call her. It's up to y'all.
What was her, is this?
I don't know, she just said that's not accurate, and I said, Sharon, I'll speak for you. I can read your text, and she hasn't responded yet.
Why don't you just conference her in?
Yeah, if you can do that.
If she's willing to talk.
Yeah. So.
I mean, the idea of taking a break doesn't bother me. I think the idea of it being a month, the same month every year,
Hey, can I
2
put you
weeks
on
in a
speaker?
row, does kind of.
Because they want to be able to hear from you directly. Are you okay with that? Does that mean you're coming in the building? Oh, thank you, great, we'll see you in a minute. Okay, she's on her way in.
Okay, I was always under the impression that you had to have, that it was mandated, but of course the solution is, if people don't show up, you don't have a quorum, you can't have a meeting. So I always kind of thought that, yes, we're supposed to have meetings the second, or the first and.
Well, and again, I think the right answer is to make it clear in the charter.
And then you have the latitude to
And
do whatever you
then you can do it, you know, the council can, at the beginning of each year, say, okay, we're gonna take off, we're gonna have regular meetings every first and third Tuesday of every month, except we're gonna take off this one and this one. And I don't know, I mean, to me, again, maybe that's not good enough because it's not long enough of a break, but
I would
Taking a
also be
full-
concerned
taking a full
about
month
with
off
other
is a-
commissions, whether it's
Yeah.
planning,
Yeah.
how do you affect everything else? I mean, this is not just one road you're talking about. These are all the arteries that you're talking about as well.
Well, and it's part of your commitment as a council member
Yes.
to be there and do the business of your people. And I don't think twice a month is that much personally. Maybe my council time wasn't as active as y'all. We had the landfill, my goodness, and the Harry and General Murray.
It's a tornado.
So when the meeting didn't happen in January, how was that, procedurally what happened? Did Vice Mayor Henderson just say we're not going to meet on
Was that part of the bad weather as well?
It was before the bad weather.
Was it anticipating the storm?
I was not anticipating the storm. That added another complication to the timing. But the vice mayor canceled the meeting, made an announcement canceling the meeting. And we took up some of the public hearing matters on the second meeting of the month that had already been scheduled for the first meeting of the month. And that was primarily the biggest concern for canceling that meeting, was the public hearings that had already been noticed and scheduled.
Did you have to renotice those hearings? I mean, if there were like notices.
I don't recall, Clerk Kyle may
I
recall.
believe we kind of knew in advance, so we went ahead and sent the notice for that second meeting date.
Was Ms. Toombs on her way?
She was parking. Takes a minute to walk that hole.
Yeah.
Get through the maze.
So while
I
we're
think I just
waiting on
heard
her, is there any other discussion we have about the I am sensing there's concern about this, and maybe what we need to do is wait and hear from the sponsor of the motion.
Can I ask a question totally unrelated to this, to legal counsel?
Yes.
Can you give us an update on the status of the litigation involving the March decisions?
I really don't have much of an update to provide.
Very good time.
At this point. Yeah, I don't want to say something that's, but nothing has happened that will affect
The decision?
any duties of this board at this time. It's just,
It's still pending.
it's still pending.
Which part of Chancery is it pending in? Do you know?
Oh, I have to, let me see, let me check my email. I think it's,
It's okay if you don't have it right handy. It's easy enough to find out. I was just curious which chancellor had been assigned the case. Nick, if you find it, let us know. But I think
okay, I will.
we'll move on. Councilmember Toombs is here. We've been having discussion about your proposal,
Yes.
proposed charter amendment about
Yes.
September, and would be delighted to hear from you on that particular proposal.
Sure. So the no regular meetings in the month of September is not a break. Council members rarely, if ever, get a break. We are dealing with constituent issues almost on a 24/7 basis. We move at a very fast rate of speed in terms of the issues that we deal with on a daily basis. Most council members also have a standard full-time job in addition to being a council member. They have families, friends. There's a lot to juggle for a council member. So the purpose of not having it, and excuse me, I'm out of breath, I got here as fast as I could. I mean, legally parked, so please don't tell me.
We can't do anything about that now.
Remember, we're on TV, so.
That's all I'm putting it out there, like, it's Councilmember Toombs and not a regular person. I mean, not a non-council person. But it's to allow council members to take one thing off of their plate. Because with regularly scheduled council members, you're preparing legislation, you're making sure that you get amendments in, you're reading the agenda, you're making sure that you're prepared for those meetings, prepared for the committee meetings that are attached to it, and you kind of have to put other things to the back burner so that you can do that and be prepared and engaged and represent the folks that elected you, right? And so by not having a regularly scheduled September meeting, it allows council members, again, to take something off their plate. They can focus on their community meetings. I know I have, and most council members, I have monthly community meetings. So you can focus on your community meeting. You can focus on constituent issues. You can attend your kids' baseball game. You know, it just allows things to slow down for a little bit every year, allow council members to catch their breath, because we need to take care of ourselves as well so that we can be mentally fit, physically fit, spiritually fit to serve the residents of Nashville. And so it's not taking a break, it's not going away. Council members are always available. We are some of the most available people in Nashville. It is just allowing us to have a period where things slow down just a little bit so that we can catch up, catch our breath, and be ready to go for the rest of the year. It doesn't negatively or significantly impact planning. It's just changing their schedule around just as they did for the January meeting that we didn't have this past January. It would just be on a regular basis. They would have time to plan, and that would just be the standard, just as their current schedule is the standard. So there is no impact to constituent services. It may actually improve it because you have council members who have a moment to refresh themselves. It doesn't impact applicants for zoning. There is no negative impact. It is only positive in that it allows council members to better served because they're taking a moment to slow down some and catch up on the things in their lives.
Was there any discussion about the impact on the meetings that would occur thereafter, that it, so in effect, you would have like almost a double agenda of items in
I mean,
October?
it would be the same as during an election year. So during an election year, the term ends at the end of August. And so there's no activity in September. You start back up the first Tuesday in October. It would essentially be the same thing. So there is no, I don't think there would be any doubling up if that's the schedule that folks know. It's not oh, we didn't know there was going to be a meeting next month. It would become a part of the regular routine. And also part of the amendment is that the vice mayor or the mayor can call a specially called meeting. We have specially called meetings all the time. So it's not just our regular meetings that we attend. So there's still the opportunity, if something were to arise, that there could be a specially called meeting of the council.
Any questions of?
No, I mean, I think the goal is a good one. I don't have any problem with the idea that there needs to be an opportunity for the council members to take breaks. My concern is just mandating it be 2 meetings in September forever. And to me, the better way, in my view, would be to let the vice mayor, at the beginning of each year, just pick 1 or more meetings that wouldn't go off, and you could schedule it that way, as opposed to it being mandated in the charter that it's September. That's my only concern, is that I like the idea. I'm just not sure I like
Putting it in the charter.
putting it in the charter that it always has to be the 2 meetings in September. That's my only concern about it. And I think, again, it gives, if you did it where you just let the vice mayor do it, then when you have a January, like you did this year, which is not in September, you could do it because of, you have more, it gives you more flexibility. That's my only concern about it, is I believe flexibility is needed, because you just don't know what's going to happen going forward, and having it being more flexible to me would be better. That's my only comment.
Thank you. Is there, when there is an election year and there's a runoff, is there only then usually the 3rd Tuesday?
No, they never meet in September.
They don't meet in September?
Not during an election year.
Not at all.
And you can argue whether they should or not, but they don't. They never have for as long as I can remember.
Has there ever been a time when there hasn't been a runoff? I can't remember.
Not really.
I don't think so.
I can't remember.
When you think of just the at-large and what you require there, there's always a
Right,
step.
yeah, I don't think we've ever had a non-runoff for the at-large.
I can't remember that.
Now, my memory is very dim, so, it's like, in the last few years, I know there hasn't, but, back in my earlier years, maybe, but I don't really remember any.
I can't remember a time when there wasn't.
Not for that
I remember a
large,
time when there was
yeah.
only one.
Yeah, I do too. I remember
One
when we had
runoff.
4 out of the 5 picked, but we still had that last one because no one could get none of the candidates, there were a bunch of candidates too, could get that.
4 of the 5 got it, but 1 didn't.
Yeah.
I can't even remember who it was now.
Me either.
I just
But-
remember that happening.
That takes too much brain power.
Yes.
I can't-
Okay, I probably should have asked for a motion on this. We've been discussing it, but we do need a motion to either recommend approval or recommend disapproval of the proposed charter amendment concerning September meetings. Can we get a?
And that motion needs to include the same language that if it's a motion for approval, it needs to include the same language about the form, correct?
Yes, this applies to all of them.
Right.
1902A. So, can we get
So
a?
I guess our motion on the last one,
Kind of skipped that part.
we forgot to bring that up.
Yes. So,
Maybe we need to retroactively vote after this one to deal with that too.
I think then we can vote to include
Yeah.
that language on any
On the other-
motions
yeah.
that were so done.
I'd like to make a couple of comments.
Yes.
And part of this is, I'm old to this. You know, my time on the council was 95 to 03, but I've stayed very involved. And I found it necessary. And I also think that people have the expectations. They do, you know, they find you at church. It's like, we just had a tornado, and you want to talk about sidewalks? You know, it's taking me another month before I'm going to have electricity in my neighborhood. But I think that it's because of that experience, I really think it is important. When I think of the growth that's happening in Nashville and the opportunities that we have, your labors are going to be harder. There's no doubt about it. But I think we make these sacrifices. If you choose to seek to be an elected official, you are going to make sacrifices, and you are not going to even know what to expect those sacrifices will be, but you will step up or you will find another way. And as I see Nashville growing and some of the things that are happening, I think the presence of council members in regular council meetings and not having that, think of this, if you're not going to have the possibility of people being able to come and, because you're not having regular meetings, you're having the June meetings. Then 2 months later, you're also doing that. That's not good timing. So I have concerns that probably are about my background, but I understand things have changed in the last 20 years. But I think it's appropriate for it to be off in the election year. I have concerns about the other years.
Would you like to make a motion?
I move that we disapprove.
I second.
We have a motion by Ms. Meehan, seconded by Ms. McLaughlin, to recommend disapproval of the charter amendment, proposed charter amendment concerning September meetings. Any discussion on the motion? If not, then all those in favor of voting to disapprove, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So we don't need a roll call? Okay, so the motion then passes unanimously to recommend that this proposed charter amendment not be adopted.
And just for purposes of the record, I move to amend our approval of the Second Amendment. Was that right? The one that
Yes.
passed without the added language about conforming to the required charter language, to add that.
In 19.02. Okay, we have a second to that motion.
Second.
McLaughlin, so our two M's have done that, Murphy and McLaughlin. So all those in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Then that will pass
So
unanimously.
then there's no question that.
Yeah, sure.
So,
I have an update from John Whitaker.
Okay.
He's the attorney handling the petition case. So it's before Chancellor Ann Martin,
okay.
Part 2. And there's a hearing set for October 10, and that is to address the merits of the lawsuit that's been filed. And the petitioners, essentially won't be seeking to have this go in November.
Right,
So,
we can't get it if it's,
yeah, there's
the
a time.
hearing's in October, it's gonna kick it to another one.
So that's,
That was
October
really
10th.
my question
Yeah, I
is
didn't
it
know what it
likely to
was.
be
No.
up for this election? And really, whoever loses might appeal, so it's probably gonna be a while, so, okay, thank you.
Okay. Nikki, is there anything else we need to do, or Margaret, from the council standpoint?
No, just the letter can be addressed to the vice mayor. The vice mayor. The letter from
Stating the
you,
yes.
from the chair, reflecting the recommendation of the Charter Revision Commission, consistent with the motion.
Mr. Kyle's been very helpful in doing that. I started to say assist, but I will give you full credit for doing that for my signature. So, okay, then, if there's no more business to come before us, entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Good. Thank you, and I appreciate everyone being here. It's wonderful when we have a full contingent of commission members.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank y'all.
And we appreciate y'all thinking about these things as being proactive as opposed to reactive. And, I mean, I think the suggestion about fixing the salaries, I do think that's not one